22 away from 8. Trump's getting sick of Putin playing games over Ukraine. He's whacked the Russians with sanctions overnight. They'll apply to two of Russia's largest oil companies. They account for more than half of Russia's crude oil exports. The tax revenue from these companies helps to fund that war in Ukraine.
In terms of honesty, the only thing I can say is every time I speak with Vladimir, I have good conversations, and then they don't go anywhere. They just don't go anywhere. These are tremendous sanctions. These are very big. Those are against their two big oil companies, and we hope that they won't be on for long. We hope that the war will be settled.
This, of course, comes after last week. The Americans said no to the Tomahawks after President Zelenskyy went and met with Donald Trump. Zelenskyy has been meeting with EU leaders in Brussels this morning. A letter of intent's been signed between Ukraine and Sweden, which could see Ukraine buy up to 150 fighter jets to support their fight against Russia. EU leaders have also given a preliminary green light to a new repatriations loan for Ukraine, which could be funded by, wait for it, Russia's frozen assets. Speaking in Brussels, Zelenskyy has said he's pleased with the sanctions imposed on Russia by the US.
19th package is very important, and of European leaders, of EU, but American sanctions are also very important. And this is a good signal to other countries in the world to join the sanctions.
Vasyl Miroshnichenko is Ukraine's ambassador to Australia and New Zealand and joins me at the desk. Ambassador, good morning.
Good morning.
Good to see you again. Your thoughts on the move from Donald Trump, and last week the Brits did the same thing. What's your reaction?
We welcome President Trump's sanctions on Lukoil and Rosneft. These are two major oil companies in Russia. As you know, oil and gas sectors are providing 40% of revenue to the Russian government. And most of this money goes towards weapons and ammunition, which is used to kill Ukrainians.
So if you can cut off the gas companies, then you can affect the tax take and hopefully affect the war in Ukraine.
100%. We need to increase the cost of war for Russia. And sanctions is a very effective mechanism of how you do it. Because as long as Russia can fund this war, they will continue. Ukraine wants to end this war. President Trump wants to end this war, but Russia wants to end Ukraine. And we clearly see how they're dragging it all along. They're pretending to be negotiating, but they are not. They're demanding Ukraine's surrender. But all they want to actually get some extra time to finish the job.
What about the frozen assets? Because I was reading this morning, there's $170 billion worth of frozen Russian assets. What exactly does Ukraine want with them?
Russia has committed an act of aggression, which is a more serious crime in international law. Russia has committed numerous war crimes and crimes against humanity. Ukraine is destroyed. We need to be rebuilt, and we need also to buy defense and weapons to protect ourselves. We have $300 billion of Russian assets outside of Russia, in Europe and in other jurisdictions, and this money could be used for that. And we are already benefiting from the interest which is generated from that money by getting loans which are facilitated by the EU, and they're paid from the interest generated from that amount of money.
Are there any assets in our region, our neck of the woods?
Not many, not much. There are some here in New Zealand and some in Australia, primarily of the people connected to Putin, private property. The assets which are currently, like, for instance, in Belgium, this adult, basically foreign currencies, which are out there in a bank. Here it's primarily property. Sovereign assets, not much, I think.
Not massive. Do you know, have you asked our government about what's happening with them?
Look, I mean, some of them are immobilized, but I think what's important, Ryan, here, why this war is so relevant to New Zealand. And I want to put a little bit of a context for your audience, because the way, and the best deterrence that you can build here in the region is to ensure that Russia fails in Ukraine. And I think this is so important. Therefore, we are asking New Zealand government for more support. Recently, I had an honor to be with your Defense Minister, Ms. Judith Collins, in Ukraine. We're there together. She had great meetings with her counterpart. She also met our foreign minister. She saw with her own eyes the destruction that Russians are bringing to Ukraine. But look, we have to work together. We need to make sure that no other authoritarian regime, and there are many authoritarian governments here in the region, to be frank, do not use it as an example. Because it's a very inspiring example. Because the example is very simple. If you are strong, if the might is right, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
You can change borders. And hence,
and we've got Taiwan sitting in the middle of the South China Sea.
Absolutely.
What about, you mentioned you want more support from our government. What does that mean? I know last time you were here we spoke about, do you guys maybe want to sell us some drones, some technology?
It's still relevant, by the way. This is what we can offer. We can offer you to build your own sovereign defense capabilities in terms of unmanned systems, maritime drones and aerial drones. It's still relevant, but this is kind of what we could do together. But in terms of support, I mean, I'll just give you one of the examples. Ukraine is heavily mined. There is in 25% of the territory, unexploded ordnance, anti-personnel mines. They're all there. We need help to demine Ukraine. It's a huge environmental disaster in Ukraine, and we'll need a generation or two to clear it up. We would welcome New Zealand's efforts to achieve it. You're also part of the drone coalition. You can help us. We can, basically, you can procure from Ukraine for Ukraine, or you can support your local producers and buy from them and send to Ukraine the equipment and kit what is out there. These are just some of the examples. I mean, in addition to providing energy support, Russians are deliberately destroying our civilian infrastructure, power generation.
We're coming into summer, but you guys are heading into winter, and this is their tactic, is to try and freeze you out. Just to finish, there will be people who will say, I understand Russia is the aggressor, it's not fair, but you guys also need to come to the party in terms of concessions. What do you say to them?
It's very simple, Ryan. We didn't start this war. Russia started this war 11 years ago. They got emboldened, came back 8 years later with one goal. They want to destroy Ukraine's sovereignty. We are fighting back. We are a democracy, and this is an existential threat for Putin, having a democracy next door. This is what it is. It's an imperialistic war. It's basically Russia is trying to revive the Soviet Union and the big empire that they are so proud of. I don't think we have to make any concessions in this particular case, because it's not about the concessions, because it's not the territory that Russians want, right? Russians want Ukraine to be destroyed, and we have to keep this in mind when we deal with this issue.
Ambassador, great to have you back on
Thanks
the
for
program.
having me.
Thanks for being with me. That is Vasyl Miroshnichenko, who's Ukraine's ambassador to Australia and New Zealand. It is just gone 7:45.